My name is Jason Hale, and the first thing you should know is this. Grief does not make you reckless. It makes other people reckless around you. 2 weeks after my wife Margaret was buried, the phone rang like it had somewhere urgent to be, and no patience from my timing. Not a polite ring, not a hopeful one, the kind that assumes you'll answer because of what it intends to demand. I was standing in the kitchen when it rang. Her kitchen. Though already the word hers was beginning to loosen. Like a screw you don't notice backing out until the shelf tilts. Steam rose from my mug and curled against the cabinets she'd painted herself 20 years ago, insisting on a color that looked wrong for a full month and perfect for the rest of our lives. The clock ticked, loud, honest. I let it ring. When I finally picked up, my son didn't say hello. "Dad, we need to talk. Today." Paul has always spoken like time belonged to him, as if urgency were proof of correctness. I recognized the tone immediately, the one he used when he was 12 and wanted an advance on an allowance he'd already spent. "Good morning to you too," I said. He exhaled sharply. Paper shuffled on his end of the line. I could hear it, the sound of plans being stacked. "There's a beer," he said, "a real one. Carl Benton's handling it. Taxes are coming due, and this place is too big for you now." Now, that word does a lot of work when people don't want to name what they really mean. I looked around the kitchen. Margaret's chair sat angled slightly away from the table, just as she'd left it the morning she went into the hospital. The clock she'd made me keep, ugly thing, she said, but reliable, marked time without mercy. The fridge hummed, the house breathed. "I'm drinking my coffee," I said. "You can talk." He talked about square footage, liability, about what happens to men my age when they insist on maintaining more than they should, about efficiency, about safety, about how he'd already looped in his sister, Claire. "She agrees," he said quickly. "She says it's practical. Practical is what fear calls itself when it puts on a blazer. We'll handle the logistics," he continued, "and the money situation too. Those checks you've been sending Lily. We should centralize that. Family should have one plan." My hand drifted to the drawer beside the sink. I opened it without looking. Inside lay a blue folder and a brass key taped neatly to its cover. Margaret had always kept to anything that mattered. "Lily doesn't need a middleman," I said. "She needs structure." Paul snapped. "Dad, you can't keep up with this stuff anymore." I smiled then, not because it was funny, because it was familiar. On the second business day of every month, $500 landed in Lily's account. Tuition, books, fees, no commentary, no leverage. She sent me photos sometimes, a crooked bookshelf she'd fixed on the second try, the cafeteria meal she didn't pretend to enjoy. Ritual, not rescue, a way of saying I see you without making her smaller. "You're not thinking clearly," Paul said. "No," I replied. "I'm thinking without an audience." He pivoted. He always did. "The taxes alone. There's no mortgage," I said. "Taxes are current. I'm not waiting for you to start making mistakes." That line, the one that stacks concern like scaffolding, then climbs it as if he built the house himself. "Do you want Claire cleaning up after you?" he pressed. "Do you want Lily watching you fall apart?" I set my mug down carefully, porcelain against wood. A sound Margaret would have noticed. "Paul," I said, and let his name be a full stop. "We won't discuss the house on the phone." Silence, then louder. Oh, we will. Every day you stall, the beer looks elsewhere. You think a place this old sells itself. If you want to talk, I said, call me Thursday between 2 and 3. Bring your lawyer. He laughed without warmth. What is this, court? It's a schedule. You're playing games. No, I said. I'm setting terms. He tried one last angle. You hiding money in the walls now. We know there's more. Be reasonable. Sign today. We'll make this easy. Easy is a leash if you let it be. 2 o'clock, I said. Or not at all. I hung up before he could sell me kindness with conditions. The silence returned the way rightful tenants do, without apology. The clock ticked. The mug cooled. The house held its shape without Margaret in it, which felt like betrayal and proof at the same time. I stood there longer than necessary, then slid the drawer shut. The folder waited. Margaret had known, not in the dramatic sense. In the quiet, accurate way she knew most things. She had always said grief didn't arrive with speeches. It sat in a room and removed the person who made it make sense. And then it waited to see what you would do with the space. I took the folder out and set it on the table. Whatever was inside, I knew this much already. Not every door in my life opened onto this house, and whatever came next would not be handled on the phone. I did not open the folder immediately. That's not like me. I've always believed delay is just fear dressed up as courtesy. But the blue folder sat on the kitchen table the way Margaret used to sit when she wanted me to notice something without saying it outright. Present, patient, certain I'd come around. I made another cup of coffee, not because I wanted it, but because routine steadies the hands. Steam rose again, tracing the same lazy patterns against the cabinets. The clock ticked. Honest work, ticking. The kind that doesn't ask what you've lost before it keeps going. I sat in a chair without thinking, the wrong chair. I stayed there anyway. When I finally opened the folder, the sound it made was small, paper sliding against paper. No drama. Margaret never liked drama. She said it made people sloppy. On top lay a single sheet, unlined, her handwriting squared and economical. If you're reading this, you need what's inside. No, my love. No, be gentle with yourself. She never softened instructions. She trusted me not to need padding. Beneath it were bank statements, several. Different institutions, all modest, all in her name. Not fortunes, not secrets in the theatrical sense. Just careful accumulation spread across time, like she'd been setting stones in a river long before she knew she'd need to cross it. Enough to say this wasn't panic. Enough to say it wasn't an accident. I felt something in my chest loosen that I hadn't realized I'd been bracing. Next came a deed. I recognized the address before I finished reading it. White House, blue shutters. Narrow road that forced you to slow down whether you wanted to or not. We'd walked past it once, years ago, on a trip that had been meant for sightseeing and ended up being about silence. She'd stopped near a low wall and rested her hand on the stone. If we ever need a place that doesn't argue back, she'd said, almost to herself, it's here. I'd smiled. I thought it was poetry. Her name alone was on the deed. No co-owner, no footnote. The folder continued. A letter from a local office offered to arrange rentals, caretaking, general oversight. Margaret's reply was written in pencil at the bottom, light but firm. Not yet. Keep private. Private is a word that knows exactly what it's for. There was a small insurance policy, newer than the rest of the documents. I recognized the company, recognized the date. One beneficiary. Lily. No Paul, no Claire. The paper shifted slightly in my hands, as if it had weight beyond itself. I waited for anger. It came halfway up, then stalled. What replaced it wasn't peace, exactly, but clarity. The clean kind. The kind that doesn't ask you to pretend. At the back of the folder sat an envelope addressed to me. Jason, just my name, centered. No punctuation. Inside was a letter I could hear her reading as I went. If this is in your hands, the calls have already begun. I let out a breath that surprised me with its sound. They will sound like concern. Listen past the tone to the verbs. I thought of Paul's voice. Sign. Centralize. Handle. Manage. The house is yours. It stays yours. The words sat solid on the page. No conditions. No asterisks. I paid it off so no one could sell your life back to you in bullet points. I closed my eyes at that. She'd hated bullet points. Said they turned people into summaries. If you need to step away to think, do not explain. Explanation invites negotiation. That line made me smile. Margaret always said less when she meant more. Build boundaries on paper. Let the paper do the talking. I read the letter twice, then once more, slower, for the rhythm. She'd written it the way she did grocery lists, clear enough that nothing could hide between the lines. The kitchen felt fuller after that, not crowded, anchored. I looked again at the clock she'd insisted we keep. Ugly thing, reliable. It ticked like it knew it had a job and meant to do it well. Paul thought I was hesitating. I could hear it in his voice from earlier, the way he filled silence with plans. Claire would call it practical. She always did when what she meant was please don't make me choose. They thought grief had made me vague. They were wrong. Grief had done what it often does when you stop fighting it. It had stripped away the noise and left the structure standing. The house, the paper, the truth that didn't require defending. I slid the documents back into order, statements, deed, letter, then closed the folder. The brass key taped to the cover caught the light. Margaret had kept 2 exits. I picked up the phone and scrolled until I found the number I hadn't needed in years. Daniel Mercer answered on the second ring. Mr. Hale, he said, voice steady. I'm sorry about Margaret. Thank you, I said. I need to stop answering calls. There was a pause. Then, tell me what she left you. I looked at the folder on the table, the key. The quiet kitchen that had survived everything so far. Instructions, I said, and enough paper to make them stick. Then come in. Daniel replied, let's give the paper something to say. I hung up and set the phone down. For the first time since the funeral, the room felt like it belonged to me again. And somewhere beneath the grief, steady as the clock, something else took shape. Not anger, resolve. I stopped answering the phone, not dramatically. I didn't announce it. I simply let the calls arrive and leave the way weather does when you close a window. Paul tried mornings first, then evenings. Claire left messages that began with concern and ended with instructions. I deleted them without listening twice. Silence, I learned, unsettles people who are used to filling it. Daniel Mercer's office smelled like lemon polish and old books. The kind of place that believed in weight, of paper, of words, of consequences. He didn't rush me. He never had. Margaret chose him because he listened past what people said and wrote down what they avoided. He laid the documents out on his desk one by one, as if arranging proof. You're fully competent, he said calmly. almost casually. That matters more than anything they're threatening. Threatening, the word felt right. Paul's latest message mentioned options. Legal ones, protective ones, the kind that arrived wearing gloves. "I don't want a war," I said. Daniel nodded. "Then we don't give them one. We give them clarity. We drafted letters, short ones, boring ones. The kind that make tempers bounce off because there's nothing to grab onto." The house was not for sale. My finances were current and independently managed. Support for Lily would continue without intermediaries. All further communication would be directed through counsel. No accusations, no explanations, just statements. Margaret would have approved. The letters went out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Paul was at my door. He didn't knock. He pressed the doorbell like persistence could replace permission. I watched from the hallway mirror as he squared his shoulders, rehearsing something that looked practiced and tired. I opened the door just enough to make a point. "This isn't over," he said immediately. "No," I agreed. "But this part is." He stepped forward. I didn't move. "You're pushing everyone away," he said. "Claire's worried. Lily's confused. You think hiding behind lawyers makes you strong." I looked at my son, really looked at him, the lines he pretended not to have, the way his hands curled when he wasn't controlling something. "I think shouting concern doesn't make it care," I said. He scoffed. "You're not thinking straight." "Daniel disagrees," I replied. "So does my doctor. And the court would too, if it came to that." That stopped him. I hadn't raised my voice. I didn't need to. Paper had already done that work. He tried another angle. "Mom wouldn't want this." I held the door open wider then, just enough. "Margaret planned this," I said, every step. His face shifted. Confusion, then something closer to fear. "You don't know that," he said. I reached behind me and picked up the blue folder from the side table. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. "She knew you'd confuse control with care," I said gently. "She didn't hold it against you. She just prepared." For a moment, I thought he might step back. Instead, he straightened. "You're making a mistake, maybe," I said, "but it's mine." He left without another word. No slam, no apology. Just the sound of shoes retreating down the path he used to run up as a boy. That night, I booked a flight. Not away, aside. The White House with the blue shutters waited without asking why. I packed lightly. Only what fit into one suitcase and my coat pockets. The folder went into my carry-on, flat and careful. Before I turned off the lights, I stood in the doorway of the kitchen. Margaret's chair was still angled away from the table. I left it that way. Some things don't need correcting. As I locked the door, the clock ticked behind me, steady, unoffended. Paper had spoken. Now I needed to listen to what came after. The island did not greet me. That was its first kindness. No questions at customs worth remembering. No neighbors leaning in. Just a narrow road that curved the way roads do when they aren't trying to get you anywhere fast. The taxi driver talked about the weather, then stopped talking altogether when he realized I preferred it that way. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd grown used to space that demanded explanation. White walls, blue shutters, stone steps worn smooth by time, and feet that had no interest in hurrying. I locked the door with the brass key. The air inside was cool and patient. Clean, but not staged. Margaret had been here without me. I could tell by the way the windows were opened, not for view, but for breeze. The furniture was simple. Nothing begged to be noticed. On the small kitchen table sat an envelope. Not a surprise, just timing. Jason, it read, in the same hand. I didn't sit down right away. I walked through the rooms first. 2 bedrooms, one of them untouched, the other holding a single suitcase I didn't remember packing. Doing, always one step ahead, never in the way. I returned to the table and opened the letter. This place is not an escape, she wrote. It's a pause. I smiled despite myself. If you're here, someone tried to make your life smaller by calling it help. Let them wait. Waiting teaches people what they are not entitled to. Outside, waves worked at the rocks with no expectation of victory, just persistence. You don't owe anyone immediacy, the letter continued. Silence is not abandonment, it's alignment. I folded the paper and set it beside the window. The light held it there. Days passed without markers. I woke when my body decided, eat when hunger asked. Walked until my thoughts loosened their grip and fell into something like order. Claire emailed once. I read it. I didn't reply. Paul sent a message that began with "We need to resolve this." I deleted it. Lily sent a photo of a bookshelf she'd fixed on the second try. I smiled and sent back a thumbs up and 5 words. Proud of you. Keep going. That felt like enough. One afternoon, I sat on the low stone wall. The house behind me didn't demand upkeep beyond respect. The future didn't crowd the present. I realized then that peace isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with relief. It settles. It waits to see if you'll chase it away. I didn't. When I finally checked my messages, there was one from Daniel. They've backed off. It read, for now. I put the phone down and looked to the horizon. For now was fine. Some things hold better when they aren't pressed. I came back in the early fall. Not because anyone asked me to. Not because the tension had evaporated. The leaves were turning, and I wanted to see them do it in the yard I'd learned their habits in. Some returns don't need witnesses. The house was exactly as I'd left it. That was a comfort and a warning. Dust gathered honestly. The clock ticked without resentment. Margaret's chair still angled away from the table, stubborn as ever. I unpacked slowly, put things where my hands expected them to be. Left the suitcase in the hallway longer than necessary, just to prove I could. Paul called 2 days later. His voice was different, not softer, thinner. I overreacted, he said. No apology attached, just the outline of one. I know, I replied. Silence followed. He wasn't used to agreement without surrender. We should talk, he said eventually. We can, I answered, on Sundays. He hesitated. That's specific. Yes, Claire came the following week. She brought pie, apple, too much sugar, not enough cinnamon. Margaret would have noticed. I didn't mention it. We sat at the table and spoke about neutral things until the edges dulled. She glanced at the folder once, then looked away. I just didn't want to lose you, she said finally. You didn't, I replied. You just mistook access for closeness. She nodded. It was enough. The checks to Lily continued. Quiet. Regular. She didn't thank me. That pleased me more than if she had. Support shouldn't require ceremony. I planted the garden the way Margaret liked, uneven rows, space for error. I placed a small plaque near the back fence. No dates, just her name. The house stayed mine, not as a fortress, as a fact. I still hear the clock at night. still reach for our side of the bed before remembering. Grief didn't leave. It learned of the floor plan and stopped bumping into things. People think strength looks like control. It doesn't. It looks like knowing what you will not give away, even when asked nicely, especially then. Margaret gave me that lesson long before she left. She just made sure it would still be legible when I needed it most. I live here now, the way we planned, without ever saying it aloud. With space, with paper that knows its job, with doors that open only when they should. And if anyone asks why the house was never sold, why the money never pooled, why I didn't make things easier, I tell them the truth. Some things aren't meant to be managed. They're meant to be kept.